Grassy Posse Packer Nation, welcome to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom Grassi, and today we're going to be taking a quick gander at last night's preseason finale against the Kansas City Chiefs, in which the Packers lost. But the good news is, really, no one of note played. It was a little rough out there. Aaron Rodgers was like, nah, I ain't even getting on the plane. But then again, with $34 million, he doesn't have to get on the plane. He can buy his own plane. But that being said, this is the last game before we got roster cuts on Saturday, which we will be doing a video on later that evening. So expect that on Saturday. Obviously, the big news here was we wanted to see how our QBs were going to shake out with the trading of Brett Hundley over to Seattle. That means that Deshaun Kaiser is now the immediate backup to Aaron Rodgers. And reports were coming out this week that good old Tim Boyle was also going to make the 53-man roster. And McCarthy said that we were going to be seeing lots of Boyle last night, and we most certainly did. Whether that was a good thing, we'll talk about that momentarily. Talking about Deshaun Kaiser real quick, went 5 for 7, 57 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The interception was yuck. It looked gross. Wasn't really a great throw at all. But again, one of the highlights of Deshaun Kaiser is his ability to have that pocket awareness and to scramble. He kind of has that Brett Hundley scrambling type-esque moves, and at the same time, I think has better pocket presence and also has more potential than Brett Hundley. Though I don't know if he can chew gum better. He did have 1 touchdown to Geronimo Allison, which was a 31 TD on a 4th down, which was an awesome throw and catch, beat the Chiefs secondary. And so that's the kind of what you want to see from Deshaun Kaiser. Now, I'm still a little bit nervous considering we don't have a veteran backup, so I don't have any wood, but God forbid Aaron Rodgers... Oh, nailed it. God forbid Aaron Rodgers goes down. Are we going to be screwed again? That's something that gives me great pause. Our wide receiver battle also continued earlier this week when we were talking about roster cuts. I said that Trevor Davis would potentially make the team because of his kick return ability, and that there's not a ton of people on the roster that have that, especially not guys like Rollins, tired of Cobb doing it. And so they really were going to look at Trevor Davis. And Trevor Davis didn't really have a great night. He had 1 punt return for -4 yards. He fumbled the ball. It wound up getting recovered, though. He had 7 kickoff returns and averaged about 22 yards per return. So not the greatest numbers. Now, another guy who was on the bubble is, of course, MVS. Mr. Scantling went 3 for 41 last night. Looking at the other wide receivers, Jamon Moore, 2 for 13, and Equinemius St. Brown, 1 for 10. So for Brown and also Jamon Moore, not really crazy numbers. One of those guys will make the team. If they keep Tim Boyle, I could also see them cutting ESB. I don't think that's going to happen, but I've really been focusing on his potential and him coming out of college and looking so good, and that's what I think the Packers are going to see. But really, during this preseason, he has not impressed with the limited opportunities that he has gotten. Now, that being said, we also had good old Aaron Jones at running back. Aaron Jones, of course, suspended for the first 2 games of the season, which will make way for Williams and Montgomery to lead carries. But he looked pretty darn good in his limited play. So he went 9 for 34 on the ground with a touchdown. Also through the air, he was 3 for 21. And I like Aaron Jones a lot. And so if you are a fantasy player, it's going to be a complete toss-up on who's going to get the majority of the carries. Obviously, Williams is the starter, but Montgomery might take a little bit from that depending on how they do with those 2 games without Aaron Jones. And who knows, when Aaron Jones comes back, he might get more and more opportunities. I actually just had my first fantasy draft, and I literally drafted all 3 of them that I'm going to lose this year. But that's okay. It's definitely going to be a committee. Another guy who looked pretty darn good who's on the bubble is Robert Tonyan, the tight end. He looked really good against the Steelers, and he looked good here, going 4 for 31 with a touchdown. And I really hope he makes the team instead of Lance Kendricks. I just think, obviously, he's a young guy. He has more potential, and he's looked pretty good in those 2 games. Now, talking about good old Tim Boyle. The offensive line was better, by the way, this week after the atrocity that was the Raiders game last week, only allowing 2 sacks. But Tim Boyle had the majority of the snaps, going 15 for 31 for 127 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. So obviously not looking as good as he has in previous games. So again, reports are coming out that we are going to potentially keep him on the 53-man roster, but this did not do any favors for Tim Boyle. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets signed to the practice squad. But then again, I mean, just due to the lack of depth, we might wind up keeping him on the 53-man roster. Finally, our secondary really didn't look really good tonight. We got burnt on a whole bunch of deep throws. The red zone, we weren't really looking that great. Hawkins got burnt a few times. And so for the secondary, I think Hawkins will still make the team just out of, again, necessity for depth. But, you know, he might make the team or not make the team, and Rollins would take his place instead. But Rollins really hasn't done anything at all either. So, I mean, kind of just a game in which I believe that Tonyan hopefully solidified his roster spot. A few the guys like Kaiser kind of just progressed a little bit more. But I think this kind of just leaves more and more uncertainty when it comes to the wide receiver position and our cornerbacks. But let me know what you thought about the game. Obviously not the greatest outcome, but let me know in the comments section down below. You can always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com, TOMGROSSI Comedy, or Tom Grossi Comedy on the Twitter and the Instagram and the Facebook. Check out Allergic to Fun, my debut comedy album, which debuted at numero uno at Amazon last weekend, which was awesome. You can get a digital copy of that on iTunes and Amazon, or you can pick up a physical copy, which will be shipped out next week at TomGrossiComedy.com. Podcast, we're on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, and of course here on the YouTubes. But thank you so much for watching. Oh, baby, the next game, the next Packers game I cover, it'll be for real. Sunday Night Football against the Bears. And I'm not going to lie, that's titillating. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi, and as always, go Pack Go.